Hey, everybody, this is Brett Ingram, and this is the optYOUmize podcast, the show that helps entrepreneurs build their dream business and dream life. Today, we're talking with Aaron Parry, former struggling entrepreneur turned success story the hard way. He searched and struggled and never gave up, and then he found the secrets to success, and he's going to share those with us. So I'm super excited about this because I think we can all learn a lot as entrepreneurs from anyone who had to struggle and persevere to make it. And we can be inspired to keep going ourselves until we make it too. So with that, welcome, Aaron, and thanks a lot for joining us.
Brett, thanks for having me on the show. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Yeah, likewise. I'm super excited about it. So I have a bunch of questions that I want to ask you, obviously, but I do want to start off a little bit with your background. So you've discovered what it takes to succeed, but you did that through a lot of frustration and struggle. Can you give us a sense of your backstory a little bit?
Oh, Brett, it's been a long, long, long slog, and a lot of it is there's been so much failure, honestly, and it's that persistence really that's got me to where I am today. Really, it's just that unwillingness to kind of give up, really, because I've had so many opportunities to give up, and I've had quite a oh, I've lost my camera.
So we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I've had a difficult road getting to where I'm at now, but essentially, yeah, I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I was younger. I spent some time in Portugal, out there drinking and enjoying myself in my younger years. I came back, worked a load of jobs that I just hated, to be quite honest with you. It was just making me miserable, just something that was kind of just taking my soul, really, because I was just day after day, the grind, and lots of people are happy with that. Lots of people live that kind of life and are happy with that, but it wasn't me, and I'm not happy with that kind of life. So I was always looking for more, and I've tried lots of different things. I've opened a media agency, and that went horribly wrong. Well, I say it went horribly wrong. It's still going. The media agency is still going. We just had a fallout with the partner. So we went our separate ways, and there's just loads of little businesses that I've tried to start, tried to get off the ground, and just failed and failed and failed. But each time I've learned something moving forward. And patience and consistency is so important. I think we all kind of overestimate what we can do in a short period of time, but then we don't really appreciate what we can achieve over a decent period of time, over say a decade or so. So I think it's about that consistency. I joined the military. I did, and that gave me a good grounding. So after probably got back from Portugal maybe 4 or 5 years, being fed up, not making anything work, and the jobs were just grinding me down. I joined the military, and that was a great experience. I joined the Royal Air Force. I went all over the world. I had some great experiences. The training's really good. And then I had my daughter, at which point I left because I didn't want to be a weekend dad. I didn't want to be away for 6 months, every couple of years and miss out on her growing up. So I left. I joined the police, became a police sergeant, because I figured it'd be quite similar. It was very, very different, but I figured it'd be similar, but it wasn't. But because of the shift pattern, the 4 on 4 off, that gave me some flexibility to do something again, which is what I wanted. And again, after a couple of failed
Yeah.
attempts,
Did you?
excuse me, this,
Did
that,
it?
and the other.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, after a couple of failed attempts of, starting out online businesses and stuff like that, because I wanted online business because I wanted to come with freedom and success. I discovered podcasting, which is something I tried in 2018, actually. I tried an in-person podcast, very, very difficult to get off the ground due to all, getting people in the location, getting the setup right and stuff like that. It was quite difficult, especially not having a studio at the time. So I've gone back in, and I do a lot of virtual stuff, and I have a studio as well where I do some in-person stuff. So it's developed, and it's got pretty good. There's a lot of consistency that's driving it forward. And through that, to be honest, it's through the podcast that's opened up other business ventures and opportunities for me, to be honest.
Yeah, that's amazing. There's a lot of things you said in there that I think are really important. First off, I think where this came from for you, the source of the desire for your own business and something more, it matters so much because the driving force behind you never wanted to give up because you didn't like your alternatives, right? We have to do something professionally, most of us. And so if you aren't happy in your career, you're not happy in your job, you can't envision an environment like that that's going to work for you, then you got to make something for yourself. And so you may not be right at your first attempt, it may not be right at the second attempt, but you want to keep going. The other thing I think that was really important is that you said each time, even though things didn't work out, you learned something, right? Each time you took the lessons from the mistakes and now it makes you smarter, it makes you better the next time. And sometimes, in all honesty, in my experience too, is some of it is the perseverance element and some of it is timing, being in the right place at the right time with the right opportunity. And I think when you find that thing that you're passionate about and you also have learned enough of the lessons that you made enough of the mistakes that you can then do it the right way, that matters a lot. And I think you know it's a testament to your will, to your perseverance. And I do think the other thing you said that I want to touch on is patience. We live in a world now where everything is instant gratification, and everything, even that we see, when you talk about somebody starting a new business and they haven't done it yet, their impression is always that they're going to start a new business and it goes like this, straight up, no bumps in the road. They're going to live their dream life. I don't know anybody that's had that experience, not one. I know a lot of entrepreneurs because in some ways we're professional problem solvers. It's one issue after another. You've got to be able to navigate that. And I think it's easy to compress time and feel like, oh, it's taken 90 days and I didn't get anywhere yet. Sometimes you can't see the results you're getting right away. You plant seeds in the ground, you don't get the vegetables or the fruit for a long time. It doesn't mean they aren't growing. So I think those are all really, really important things that you touched on there. Um, can you share with us a time that you faced like significant self-doubt or a problem where you were really at a low and how you managed to still push through that?
I mean, I've had loads of instances of self doubt. Do you know, you have that kind of, whenever you're starting something new, if you have no background in it, you always have this kind of um, imposter syndrome, I suppose. So I've had that a lot, but there was a massive turning point in my life. So when I was in the police, I actually got arrested for something I didn't do at work. Um, so that put me at a real low. And even though they kind of disproved it and they had all the evidence to prove that I hadn't done nothing wrong, the the fact of the matter is the reputational damage, the shock of it, and the impact of that on me really put me at an all time low in my life. And from that moment on, I decided that, you know what, no matter what happens, I'm going to live for me and live on my own terms. I'm fed up of kind of fitting into a box, trying to please everybody else and trying to do these things. And that was holding me back for a long time because it was holding me back from doing stuff like this, being on podcasts and putting myself out there because of fear of criticism and being put down and that kind of thing. And when it comes to business, especially in the online world, if you've got that's a big roadblock to stopping you moving forward.
Yeah, the imposter syndrome thing, and the funny thing is, it applies to so many people, even people that are already very successful. I've seen a lot of people that still are very self-conscious. They wonder, and I've met people that want to start a podcast or want to start reaching out somehow and building a community, but they're so hesitant. And I look at them and I say, with the experience you've got and the stories that you have, people will gobble this up. I can't believe you're hesitating. So that's a really, really common thing. And I'll tell you, sort of the origin story of my own podcast. First of all, the reason that I started it was because for 17 years I've been an entrepreneur and I did it sort of in a solo environment where Now that we live behind computer screens, we're ironically more connected by technology, but less connected personally. So all of my business partners were people that lived in other places. We barely ever got together. It was very isolating, and I didn't actually have any mentors or anything like that. And so one of the things that I realized when I looked back is I went through a lot of problems and a lot of challenges I think I could have avoided if I had connected with people sooner, if I had gotten a mentor, if I had gotten advice. But sometimes as entrepreneurs, we're stubborn, or we feel as though we're supposed to have all the answers. And so I started the podcast with the sole idea to be that mentor for other people, to be that voice that says, hey, there's somebody else out there that's been through this. I understand where you are. Keep going. You'll get there. But the other thing about it is, one of my hesitations to start it was sort of that whole imposter thing, because I had already built a successful business, but I was feeling as though in order to start a podcast about business and entrepreneurship, I got to be an expert at everything. I got to have all the answers. I mean, that's my job. I'm the pod. And then one day it just clicked for me, and I said, you know what? No, I don't. All I have to do is go through the process authentically, share what I know, share what I don't know, admit my mistakes, admit my failures, and we sort of grow and learn together. And there's more power in that anyway, because nobody wants to sit there and listen to somebody who says they have the answer to every problem and every issue you've ever got. It doesn't seem real, because we all know that everybody goes through challenges. Once I made that mental shift for me too, it was like, okay, I can do this because I don't need to know everything. I just need to be out there and put the information out there. So I think that that's there's a ton of truth to that too, and I think it's a really really common thing. So how did you transition from the multiple failed attempts to finding a successful formula? Was there a specific moment, a specific epiphany, or was it just sort of the gradual effect?
Like I say, when I hit that moment in my life, I kind of my whole perspective changed. So I was then looking at things from a completely different lens, and then I think for me, it's the purpose, it's having that why. Really, I don't know if you've read Simon Sinek's book, Finding Your Why. I read it a long time ago, but I never really took that on board, or did anything with it. It took that low point in my life for me to take that on board, and having a why now. So the reason I'm doing what I'm doing, especially with the podcast, is to help other people who are in my position, in their 20s and stuff like that, who were living to please other people all the time, and to not being authentic and true to themselves. So I'm trying to help people get to where I'm at now sooner, really. And that's not to say I've got it all figured out, because I absolutely have not. And like you said with your podcast, I'm learning as I go. So I'm learning off all these great people. I'll learn off you. I'll learn off everybody I have on my show. And hopefully, as I'm learning, other people are learning with me, and together we can get into a really good place. And that change in mindset, that I'm focusing on, not focusing on what I can get out of it, more I'm focusing on what I can give other people. And I think having that switch has really changed everything. And I think people say it a lot in business, but often don't mean it, because they've heard other people say it. But it is true. As soon as you start looking at how you can serve other people and help other people, like genuinely, things just seem to fall into place.
It's amazing, and I couldn't agree more. It's hard when you're coming from a place of want and a place of need to feel as though you want to give. And I can understand why people with that scarcity sort of mentality and situation have a feeling like, well, yeah, I got to just take care of me first. And once I get there, then I'll help. But the irony is, it's exactly the opposite, right? It doesn't work that way. When you try to get yours first and then try to share, that doesn't work. When you change your mindset from what can I get, and how can I get what I want out of this, to how can I help other people, it's incredible the difference that it makes, just in everybody's sort of, even the way that they respond to you, even the way that the way you view the world, the whole thing just changes, the whole paradigm. And it is really really powerful. When I started the podcast, my goal was never, I had sort of a business on that I was doing already. So when I did this, it wasn't ever about making money. It wasn't ever about any of that other stuff. I just said, I'm going to do it for its own sake because I want to be able to share my information. I want other people that might be sitting there at their computer staring at it, having that moment where they're saying to themselves, should I just go back to my job and just give up on this stupid dream? Or should I keep going in my business? And I was at that moment so many times and I didn't have anybody there to tell me. And I wanted to be that person that would say, no, keep going. You can get there. And so that was the only reason. And I found the experience of talking to people like you and just having people on the show and has just been profoundly life changing. And I just love it. So, what do you think the key elements of a resilient mindset are, and how can people develop it? Because you get knocked down a lot. It's hard to have confidence.
It is. Ultimately, I put it down to quite a lot of things. So I played a lot of sport when I was younger, team sports and individual sports. I did rugby, I did boxing, I did a bit of MMA, I did football, so soccer in America, I suppose. Um, yeah, so I did a lot of team sports, and that builds your resilience. It really does, through time, because you experience difficulty in that, and you pull together, especially the team sports, and you learn so much from that. And I do draw a lot from that. And that led me to going to the gym and train at the gym. And again, same kind of scenario where you go through difficult periods, you get injured or whatever, and you have to keep pushing through. So I've had that kind of background, but then also every time you fail, in the short term, yeah, it hurts. It sucks a lot. It depends, how bad it is. And I've had some bad failures, like when I say the media agency, when that fell through and went horribly wrong, that was a big rift as well. So that was a really difficult one to swallow. But every time you fail, you get a little bit stronger. So, like I said about the gym, when you go to the gym, actually, when you train, what you're doing is you're actually tearing your muscles. You're actually causing damage, and then it's when you rest and recover is when they regrow stronger and bigger. So that's when your muscles grow stronger and bigger. So it's the same with resilience, really. You have to go through these things. You have to fail and you suffer a little bit, but then you just come back stronger. You have to pull yourself together. It takes time sometimes. You have to find your coping mechanisms, and it's slightly different for everybody. But as soon as you can, and I've learned to do it through a lot of these difficult moments I've had, and from being in the police and the military, I've experienced other people's difficult moments as well. I've learned to be able to detach a little bit, so I can kind of step back and look at things objectively now. I wasn't always able to do that. That's something that's taken time to develop, and it's taken failures and setbacks and to develop it, really. So I think we have to embrace the fact that we are going to fail. So we just got to look at the failures as, what can we learn from it? What can we take from it? How can we move forward? And that's not to say we don't need to take kind of a little bit of time to kind of recover from it emotionally or psychologically, but we do need to see them as a positive. What can we take from it? How is this making us stronger? I always say whenever something goes wrong that it's great character building. That's what I always say. I don't know if you've ever seen Jocko Willink's I think it's a 5-minute video on YouTube called Good. Have you ever seen that?
I haven't seen it. No.
It's brilliant. Basically, it's his attitude towards whenever anything goes wrong. He says good because it's an opportunity, and it's quite a powerful video. Actually, it's quite good. You should check it out. I'll send you a link after the show. But yeah, essentially that's what it is.
Yeah.
Every time we have a failure, every time we fall down, it's an opportunity to get back up. It's an opportunity to be stronger and move forward. So that's kind of how I built it. It's been gradual over time. It's not something that I've just been able to flick a switch and turn on.
Yeah, sometimes you have to lick your wounds a little bit. I had an experience when I was first starting my business. We didn't have the cloud storage stuff, didn't really exist yet. So I was doing research for a digital business because I didn't know anything about it, but I was working full time. I was going to graduate school at night, raising a family. Um, so I had very little time and I was squeezing in between. But like you said, I wanted to be there for my family when they were growing up. So I didn't want to work a job where I was going to be flying around the country and living out of hotels. And so one night I had 3 months worth of research on the zip drive because that's what we used to store stuff on. It was like a little USB zip drive, and it was in the bag parked in my car outside class at graduate school. And when I came out, my window was smashed and my bag was gone. 3 months worth of research, the whole first 3 months. I could only do an hour or two a day because it's all I had. And I had all of that stuff all put together, all gone. And I literally drove home that night thinking to myself, is this a sign that I shouldn't be doing this? You know what I mean? And so it was hard. I took a couple of days to really think it through and soul search before I decided, no, I'm going to pick myself up and go right back into it. Because sometimes we need that. It's funny, by the way, that you mentioned football. So my sons both grew up playing soccer here in the United States, but my older son goes to University of St Andrews in Scotland, so he plays football for them. And when he came home, he refuses to call it soccer. Now it's football. I'm like, okay, whatever, you got it. He's like, Dad, that's American football is football, and he's football is soccer. I'm like, okay, all right, I got you. um, so, what do you think are some common mindset barriers that people face when they're trying to achieve their goals, and how can they overcome them?
I think from what I've seen, sort of anecdotally, I think a lot of people kind of expect too much at the start. They put too much emphasis on it. So I go back to what you were saying earlier about how you started the podcast and why you started the podcast, and it's the same with me. So I started this podcast to help other people and to partly to help myself as well, to put myself out there and be who I truly am. Now, my goal initially was to just hit 100 episodes. That's it. That's it. I figured I'd go to 100 episodes, get to that point, and then at which point I'll know if I'm any good. Because until then, I don't even know if I'm any good at it, right? Because it takes, you know what it's like. It's a lot of repetition and practice and tweaks, that them kind of 1% improvements as you go on to try and make things better. I think if we go into something, had I gone into this and gone, all right, well, I'm going to make X amount in 6 months and it's going to be this, that, and the other, I think that already sets you off on a bad footing because there's so many factors involved in that kind of making the money. Whereas 100 episodes, I can do that. That's all on me. I put it all on myself. I can do that and it's achievable. And then I can critique myself on A, if I'm doing it well, or B, if I'm kind of letting myself down. So if I'm not doing the episodes when I should be and stuff like that, I can kind of look at it and it's all me owning it really. I own that. I own what's going wrong, I own what's going right, and I can continually work on it. If we have external expectations and we're thinking, oh, I'm going to make this much money, we can look for reasons to blame other people, and not take ownership of what we're doing. And I think that is the biggest problem. A lot of people will not take ownership of where they're at, what they're doing, what they're achieving. And I think the sooner we do take ownership, the quicker we get through, the quicker we get results, the better we feel about ourselves. Because even though we do fail, like, don't get me wrong, me and my mate, we go to the gym all the time. We went to the gym the other day, went to go in and train, walked in, it was really busy. We went, sod this, let's go get a coffee. And we didn't train, we missed our training. But, that's us not following through. Next time, we went and we trained. We did it. We were like, right, we got it this time. Hold yourself accountable. We weren't blaming anybody else. It was busy. We still could have trained. We just decided not to. We know it was our fault. But you've got to kind of look at yourself. And it's a difficult one looking at ourselves because we have that internal monologue, don't we? We all have that really critical self-talk in our head, putting us down and being negative all the time. So we've got to try and find that balance where we can be critical enough to keep ourselves moving forward without absolutely crushing ourselves. And it is a difficult balance and it takes time to develop, but we only develop it by taking ownership of our own life and what we can control and not worrying about what everybody else can control or what external factors are at play.
Yeah, the focus on what you can control. I love that, and I totally agree. You know, for me with the podcast, it was the same thing for me, except I said for a year. I said I'm going to do this for a year. I don't care what the results are. then I'll look up and decide what the next steps are. Because until I put in enough of my own effort, a lot of people want instant results for a little bit of effort. But like anything, right? A rocket ship takes off from a launch pad. It requires tremendous amount of energy to get it going. Once it's broken the atmosphere, it could float around forever with no energy at all. And business is usually very similar to that. You have to put a lot in up front, and you're not going to get back in return what you put in initially. So you're going to invest a lot and just have faith it's going to work. And then at the end of the day, you know, you don't fully know whether it's going to or not. But if you invest in the process, I know in sales careers, in very early on in my career, I had a sales job where I was in staffing. So we did basically recruiting. And I didn't know anything about sales at the time. And one of the things my boss taught me really early on, and I thought it was a great lesson, is he said, don't focus on the results because you're going to have a week where you place two or three people and you're going to get a big paycheck. The next week, you aren't going to place anybody. Focus on the input. If you control your activity and you do X amount of interviews every day and do X amount of calls and do like boom, 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 you're going to have ups and downs with your income, but it will level out because over time it will work. If you only focus on the results, then what happens is you have a great week. So that week you sit back and you go, you know what, I made enough money this week. And so you don't do any work. Well, then the next week you don't make any money. And now you're struggling because you don't have any activity in the pipeline and you're not making any money. And so it's about putting in that activity and being consistent. So I completely agree with that. I think it's great advice. Um, how do you differentiate? Look, there's a lot of magic pills out there. There's a lot of one-click solutions. How do you differentiate between valuable advice and quick fixes in the world of self-improvement?
Oh, Brett, I think we live in that TikTok world, don't we, where everybody wants that little snippet, that little one-liner and things like that. And you see some awful ones out there, don't you? On some of these things that you see on podcasts and on YouTube and other things. Everybody wants that one-liner, or everybody's looking. You look at all the ads that are on, Facebook and Instagram and all that. They're all, solve this problem in 7 days or 2 hours, or it's all like, how to grow your social media in 2 hours, and ultimately it's nonsense. All of it is nonsense. It takes time. Unfortunately, people don't want to hear it, but things take time. It takes time for us to get good at something. So if whatever it is, social media, podcasting, a business, trading on the stock market, it takes time. It takes active learning for us to continually learn and adjust and move forward. And we got to accept that it takes time. There is no magic pill. There's no such thing as a magic pill. And, you might get lucky. You might try something that kind of gives you a bit of a boost, but it's not sustainable. It's not something that's gonna last. So it is akin to the stock market. Actually, I kind of think of it like the stock market. So if you can trade in the stock market, and if you've got a set system and a good system that you follow, kind of set rules, and you follow them rules, even if you have a losing trade, okay, that's still a good trade because you've taken it for all the right reasons. Whereas if you just randomly buy a stock and it shoots up and you might make a fortune or might make a lot of money, that's a bad trade because the next time you do it, you could lose a lot of money, or you're likely to lose a lot of money. So it's still about, being consistent and doing the right things and moving forward. I always talk about marginal gains. So I don't know if you know anything about cycling, but what used to be Team Sky Cycling was back probably a decade or so ago. They were massive, and they were winning everything in professional cycling, and that's because they had this principle called marginal gains, where they would continually work on that 1% improvement. So not just on the bike riders and athletes, but on the bikes themselves, on how they transported to races. I mean, the mattresses, the pillows, everything. They would just gradually improve something every time. They would look at, right, where can we get a 1% improvement? Where can we get a 1% improvement? And over a period of time, they just destroyed the competition because that just constantly compounded and just constantly went up to the point where they were almost untouchable for a long period of time. So that's where I try to employ in what I do and what I encourage everybody else to do. You got to start. you got to start. You got to put yourself out there. You got to start. You got to, whatever it is you want to do, you got to just, doing it is the only way to improve. You got to start doing it. Look at yourself and go, right, where can I improve? Sometimes it's buying a new microphone. Sometimes it's just cutting out some of the filler words that you use, because I use a lot of filler words and I'm still working on it. But I just did one then. So you've got to work on these things, and it takes time to perfect and to get them right. It's about, like, change your lighting. You can change bits and pieces about the equipment that you're using. You can change stuff about yourself. You can get feedback from other people. So, for instance, after every show, I always ask for feedback. So we'll always talk about, how I can improve, how I can get better. And I think people need to take that on board in all aspects of life. It's not something I've always done. It's something that I've learned to do over time. So we've got to not be too hard on ourselves if we're not great at it. But we've just got to have it in our mind and constantly try to work towards that.
I think that's really powerful advice. I mean, I think, again, people always want the giant step, but oftentimes the giant step comes from lots of little steps. And so if you make that little improvement each time, it's amazing what happens over time. And I think, patience is one of those things that you learn, and being steady with things through the process of doing things, right? You eventually realize, okay, this isn't going to happen overnight, so it will happen if I just keep going. What role do you think community plays in personal and professional success, and how can someone build a support network?
Yeah, Can I just go back to the last thing first, Brett?
Yeah.
Just on what you're saying. So I've done a lot of research recently, because something I'm looking at now is YouTube. So I'm looking at, right, how do I grow my YouTube, right? How do I get better on that? Because it's a platform that I've kind of ignored for a long period of time, and it's very powerful. So I've looked at it, and just going back to that, a lot of people, their followers and their views on their videos are so steady, like for a long period of time, and they just compound massively and go off. And a lot of them, from what I've seen, is kind of the 8 to 10 year mark. So it's that consistency over time where they've gradually improved over that period. Don't get me wrong, they've not stayed the same over that period, but for kind of 8 to 10 years, they've mastered the art, and they've improved their thumbnails, they've improved their hooks, they've improved all of their video essentially, to keep people engaged, and they've just done it over time. And I think there's a lot to be said about having that consistency. Figure out your why, what you want to do and achieve with your life. Once you've got that, just be consistent and work towards it. It's the same with the podcast. If my podcast was rubbish and nobody listened to it at all, then I would still do it, because I've decided I want to do it and I enjoy doing it, and I'm enjoying the process. I'm enjoying trying it out. I'm enjoying messing up and getting things wrong and having to redo it or improve next time. I'm enjoying the whole thing. And I think once you get to that point, that's when you start to improve. Just wanted to throw that in off what you said last time. But community as well. Community is crucial, and having people to support you is massive. I struggled finding anybody who's kind of like-minded, who lived anywhere near me, to be honest. So none of my friends kind of shared that same kind of interest or desire. So I've kind of had to do it alone. But by doing it alone, I've reached out to people online, and I found a community online, and that is the beauty of social media and the internet, and us being able to converse now, which we wouldn't be able to do 20 years ago. It's
Yeah.
it's amazing. So we can build communities, and we can find communities all over the world, and I think it's important. I think social media is so big because we like to find like-minded people. We like to engage with people who support us or share the same kind of values and ideas. We do have to be careful with it, though. We don't want to get into an echo chamber, so we need to kind of ensure that we do allow a little bit of reasonable kind of, I don't know, expose ourselves to other ideas, I guess. So I've had a lot of people on my podcast, for instance, that are very similar to me, share the same values and stuff like that. And, they're great conversations. I love having them conversations. It's easy to talk to those people. However, I also have people on that I don't necessarily agree with who kind of challenge my beliefs and challenge my way of thinking. And I think that's important because I think we need to have that, and we need to think outside the box, because just because we think it or lots of people think it doesn't necessarily mean it's right, and there may be lots of things that we haven't considered as well. So we need to look at both sides of that. But community is massive, and it can help us grow through support and through challenge, through two different ways, as long as it's kind of a healthy and non-toxic kind of community environment. You don't want to be, having all the trolls and stuff like that, because that's just going to destroy your mentality, really.
Yeah, I fully agree, and I think it's it shows a lot of strength of character that you would want to engage with people that have different viewpoints as well, or viewpoints you disagree with, because that is how we grow. When I've worked in organizations, throughout my life, the organizations I was always the most impressed with were the ones where my boss or the person that I reported to or the culture was one that we were okay to disagree. We could disagree. We could share different viewpoints because we believed as part of the culture that that was a way that we all get better. If we all say yes, yes, yes to every idea, we're stuck in this little silo and we can never get out of that. I was interviewing a leadership expert on an episode. I love, love, love what he said. He said the first way he started every meeting in business is tell me something I don't want to hear. And I thought, wow, how powerful is that? You're telling your whole team that they don't need to come in with just the ideas that you say this is the way it needs to be, or that's the way we. And I just thought, what a great example of awesome leadership right there. And so yeah, I do believe that as well. I think it's super important. We don't need to try to convince people to be different. They don't need to convince us to be different, but just having the discussion is healthy. It's important for us to be exposed to other things because, to your point, especially nowadays in the online world, because all the content gets filtered to what it is that we already like, enjoy, engage with, we have a tendency to keep seeing more of the same because it'll keep us on the platform. But the reality of it is it's created some silos and divisions between people that I don't think used to exist in the same way. And so it's a little dangerous, it's a little scary. And hopefully more people will realize the importance of welcoming in other viewpoints, even if we don't always agree with them. So where can people find your products, your services? Where can people connect with you?
I mean, they can find me anywhere that you listen to podcasts, really, Spotify, Apple, and all that stuff. I do have a website that kind of links to everything. So that's called theynotlikeus.co.uk. That's my main website, and I think it has links to all my social media and stuff on there, which I'm active on. But yeah, that's probably the best way to engage with me. Come along, listen to the show, see if you like it. If you do, great. If you don't, then no skin off my nose. You enjoy yourself and find something that works for you, because not everything's for everybody, right?
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. You just want people to engage in the same way that, you talk about topics that you think matter. And for some people, that stuff resonates, and for others, it doesn't. And that's totally fine. Um, Thanks a lot for sharing that. So I have one last question to ask because I think it's really important. And I like to ask every guest this because I just love to get all the unique perspectives. And that's, what's your number one tip for success as a business owner or an entrepreneur?
Wow, that's a big one.
I know there's 100 of them, so that's all. You got to pick one.
There are so many that you could put, but I would say it's probably the taking ownership piece, taking ownership of what you're doing, what you want to achieve. But don't be overly critical. You have to do it in a way that you can kind of keep moving forward, because we can be critical to a point where we just stop ourselves in our tracks, and that's not helpful or conducive for everybody. I think a lot of the progress is made in the grey areas, in the centre ground. There's all this extreme stuff on the internet. You have to do this, you have to do that, and polar opposite, like you say, everything's polarizing on the internet, on social media, and because that's what gets the views. However, the truth is usually somewhere in the middle. So if you find that middle ground and you take ownership of what you're doing, I think you'll be successful in whatever you do.
That's great advice. Perfect. Thanks. All right. With that, it's just about time to wrap things up. I want to thank you again so much, Aaron, for sharing all your insights and great tips with us. Visit theynotlikeus.co.uk for Aaron's podcast and powerful content that's designed to inspire, motivate, and equip you with the tools you need to thrive. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And as always, remember, no matter what you want from your business and your life, don't compromise. optYOUmize. Awesome.